This is Bill Peschel, and welcome to Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents A Conversation with Heather Weidner. Over the last decade, Heather has been a very productive author. She's published 4 books in the gritty Delaney Fitzgerald series and then moved on to cozies, such as the 4 books in the Jules Keene Glamping series and the 3 books in the Mermaid Bay Christmas Shop series. And if that wasn't enough work, she is also coming out with another series, the first book of which in the Pearly Girls series will debut on March 18th. And she describes that as Veronica Mars meets the Golden Girls. And I'm looking forward to finding out what that means. So welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Absolutely. I had run into a first bit of difficulty, which you probably already know, that there is a rock climber named Heather Weidner as well.
Yes, there is.
And she also has done interviews, and I have looked at her interview, went, I don't see a mention of a mystery and then I hear, oh, that, okay, go on to the next one. Does that kind of thing pose a problem to you?
Very often, but she's a very prolific veterinarian and rock climber on the West Coast, and a lot of times I'll get a lot of congratulations for scaling Mount whatever, and I'm like, no, that's not me. No. West Coast gal.
Yeah, she's West Coast, you're East Coast. And as I understand, you're a lifelong Virginia resident. Is that right?
I am.
Yeah. Where were you born?
Virginia Beach. I grew up there. And then we moved to Central Virginia, which was right outside of Richmond, the capital. We live in Midlothian.
Mm-hmm. And you've set all your books on all your series in the state of Virginia, right?
I do. I write what I know. And Virginia is such an amazing state. It's very much like Pennsylvania and some of the areas around West Virginia, Pennsylvania. We're 2 hours from the mountains, 2 hours from Washington, 2 hours from the beach. There's lots of historic sites, lots of cultural sites. So it's fun to share.
That's kind of the nice part about being 2 hours away from Washington, is that you're 2 hours away from Washington. And Philadelphia in our case, if you want to go there, you can go there, but otherwise it doesn't impinge on your life whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So what was it like growing up in Virginia Beach? I don't know the place at all. So
it's lovely. I mean, it's always busy. Everything is open 24/7. People behave differently when they're on vacation. So they'll come down to the beach and just go crazy and do all kinds of things. My dad was a police officer there for 46 years, so I thought I had a normal childhood. I did not realize that normal people don't talk about murder and mayhem at the dinner table and dumb crooks, and we talked about true crime all the time before it was popular. My first job was to pick up the shell casings on the police range. This was before paintball, so we melted down my crayons and made bullets for the SWAT team. What 6-year-old knows how to make bullets? I mean, hey.
That should be a natural. All 6-year-olds should be taught that sort of thing. Now, because at that time, your father led the SWAT team. Am I right?
He did. He led just about everything. He led the dogs, the helicopters, the SWAT team, the tactical team. And then he was captain of operations before he retired.
But wasn't there any time where you kind of worried about him being out there? Because that sounds like a rather dangerous position to be in.
It was. And it was awful in the 70s and 80s because we didn't have cell phones. He had pagers and landlines. And he'd get called out in the middle of the night. And sometimes it would be jarring. It'd be 1 or 2 in the morning when the phone call came. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see him. I had to get up and go to school the next day. And you're always wondering, is he okay? What happened? Yeah, thankfully, he survived a lot of different upheavals and tourist things. I found pictures later as an adult of, him climbing in a cherry picker to top a jumper off the roof. And the kids would always ask him, have you shot anybody? Did you pull your gun? And he said, no, in 46 years, never. But I did deliver 2 babies because he got there before the rescue squad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're listening to the stories at the table, I don't know how gruesome they were. I guess I'm trying to compare it to when I was a kid and I watched Dragnet. If you remember that old TV show.
Yeah, Adam 12,
all those. And as a kid, you're just open to experiences. You don't have any filters whatsoever. And I kind of wonder if some of my, I wouldn't say morbid fascination with like crime and mysteries, and I read true crime books, and I've talked with coroners and talked about autopsies. I wonder if that, did you ever see any connection in your life between that? Did you think it affected you in some way?
It did because I just fell in love with Nancy Drew and Scooby Doo. And I think part of that was his influence. But I mean, we had police things, we had handcuffs. He was playing situational awareness games with us for years. I just thought we were playing games in restaurants. What's the guy's shirt? What color was it? How many kids did he have with him? You know, what color, what kind of dog was that? And I'm like, and then I realized as an adult, didn't even stand a chance as a 12-year-old or a teenager because I was being questioned by a seasoned police detective every single time.
You
So
couldn't
I
get
had a
away with it.
chance.
Couldn't get away
Yeah,
with
so I was
anything.
always the good kid. I'm doomed. Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah. Was there dating situations where the boyfriend had to meet him?
Oh yeah, and I never really told them. I mean, they usually sometimes he drove a marked car, so you would see that in the driveway. But a couple of times they were like, "All I did was stare at your dad's gun rack behind his head," and I'm like, "Did it bother you?" And he goes, "No, but it was kind of intimidating." And my junior prom date one year, about a month after prom, my dad said, "I saw your friend." I said, "Where?" And he said, "In my lockup." And I went, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's the end of that."
I'm actually curious about this because my father-in-law was a police officer, and he did basically street and patrols, and then he moved up into administration. So I don't think my wife ever mentioned anything like this. I think he in Dover, Delaware, they had quite a little more calmer environment. I think even back then.
We had the military and we had a lot of different, the shipping industries and things like that. So there were people coming and going all the time. It was 24/7.
Yeah. Well, then I wanted to talk about your latest
Mhm.
book, which is the one I read actually. It's the Mermaid Bay Christmas Shop Mysteries, the latest of which is a tisket, a tasket, not another casket. Okay, you have a copy. You have a copy of the book there to show.
There's a glare on it. Can you see it?
Looks good. That looks good. Okay. And this is let's see, it's third book in the series. It takes place in Mermaid Bay, which is according to my notes, I think it's triangle on
Mhm.
Jamestown, Yorktown, and Williamsburg.
Right. Mhm.
Okay. What's that area like?
Very historical. I kind of took some liberties with the geography because I wanted a beach down there and I wanted a very quaint little beach that was the same from, you could step back into the 50s, 60s, or 70s. I wanted cottages and no big stores and no McMansions. So I made a beach. There wasn't one there. It's really on the lake. The York River has a little beach area, but it's not a beach. But
Yeah, but it's kind of an old time town where people know each other. I think
Mhm.
I think about it like Ocean City, Maryland, before
Sure. Yeah, very
all the
much. Yeah, the
all the
old
develop.
for the development.
Yeah, and your lead is Jade, who is your heroine, who runs the
Yeah.
Christmas shop, a year-round Christmas shop. And I could sort of see that area is so densely populated with people from Richmond and Williamsburg and Norfolk and all that. I could see that it's something. We had a Christmas shop in Lancaster that did the same thing. It was open year round.
Year round.
And so you have your little town, and she has her friends. You have a cast. You have a cast of characters like Lorelai and Peppermint
Mhm.
Patty, and Bernie as well, who plays the Santa Claus. Is he a full time
Mhm.
Santa Claus there? I can't
He
remember.
hangs out at the pier and he takes out fishing charters, but when he's not busy, he's the doppelganger of Santa Claus. And
Yeah. So what led you to start thinking about setting something like this in that area? It's an interesting combination.
nation. I needed a tourist area because there's a beautiful Christmas shop. Well, actually, there are a couple in Virginia Beach, and there are a couple in Williamsburg, and there's several in Nags Head down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And I just love going there. And I thought, "Oh, that would be the perfect job to work at a Christmas shop all day. What could go wrong?" And then I thought, "Oh, well, let's have murders. Let's have her solve some crime and see what goes on." So it's sweetness and light and merriness and holiday. And then we have some things that go on in town that are kind of a little bit seedy.
Hmm. Well, in fact, in two of your books, I noticed there's a kind of a pattern because you have Hollywood come calling because they do in Twinkle Twinkle Au Revoir, and it's mentioned in Tisket a Tasket about them filming is like a Hallmark movie.
It is. And they
Uh,
filmed it at the beach, and everybody in town wants to be an extra, and everybody goes crazy.
mhm. And you did that also in the glamping series as well. Is Hollywood a particular interest of yours?
It is. I think that would just be fun. I mean, I love to watch the adaptations, but I'm also, I mean, my dad was bad about this. You never watch a police show with a cop because he sits there through the whole thing. You can't get DNA that fast. You need a warrant for that. They're not even driving their own motorcycles. I said, stop ruining chips. You're ruining it.
It's gotten even worse actually because I've heard from somebody who actually commentate. He green screens himself into the middle of the modern series, and I'm looking at the most god awful scenarios that they come up with because at least back when Emergency and Adam 12, they had kind of reasonable situations, but here it's just fantasy land about what everything is possible and what they do to get out of it. So do you watch mysteries on TV or do you
I do.
follow any
I like
series?
the true crime shows. I like the Datelines and the 2020s and 48 hour things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so are you still going to be doing more stories in the Christmas Town series? I'm sorry, I'm getting it wrong. The Christmas Shop series.
Two. Yeah, there's three more in that one, and they're all nursery rhymes gone bad. So it's Sticks and Stones and a Bag of Bones, Twinkle Twinkle Au revoir, Kiss Get a Tasket, Not Another Casket, Life is But a Scream, and then the one I'm working on now is One Two Buckle My Blue Suede Shoes. So there might be some
I
Elvis impersonators.
suspect I thought there might be. So you're a fan of Elvis, huh?
Oh yes, we made the pilgrimage one year to Graceland, and I was shocked at the '70s kitsch. But yeah.
He was very much of that time because I was working as a copy boy at the Charlotte Observer when he died,
um,
and God, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we mobilized the squad and worked to put a paper out the next day and tried to put as much Elvis related stuff as possible. And it was amazing what impact on the landscape he had at that time, even though he was kind of on his way out and he was trying to come back too. But uh, it's just quite amazing just the effect that he had on people at that time.
and it's still pop because it's still, I don't have to footnote that. I mean, other things that you put in there, people are like, who is that? Or what is that? Or I've never heard of that. And I'm like, no, everybody pretty much knows Elvis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's see. Is that going to be your next book in the series?
Life is but a scream. Oh, and I left
Oh,
one out. One is Down Came the Rain and Washed the Body Out. So that was the hurricane one.
you had mentioned, I think, in a previous interview, you wanted to work a hurricane into that.
Mhm.
You finally found a place to do that.
And it'd be perfect for us, you know, the power's out, it's noisy, there's a lot of rain and foul weather, nobody wants to be outside. And I'm sure things happen and people blame it on the weather.
Oh, absolutely. There's probably was probably a number of things going on in New Orleans when Katrina came through that some people disappeared, and it was, well, the hurricane just took them away. Um, Now, you're also got a new book coming out next month, March 18th, Murder Strikes a Chord in the Pearly
Yeah,
Girls series. Do you want to give us a description of what that
sure.
is about?
This is my first attempt at generational characters. I'm Gen X, so I'm in the middle of this one. I usually write a Gen X character, but I wanted to try a millennial. So she's younger and she inherits some property from her grandmother and an events planning business. So she has a serenity garden and a glamped up barn and a nice amphitheater. And she does events and weddings and concerts, outdoor movies, things like that. But her grandmother's friends are four late 60s, and they won't admit it, maybe 70s. And they're try to help her any way they can. And sometimes they're not so helpful. And she ends up being the technical support and she ends up bailing them out of jail. And so they get into more trouble than she does.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like you're going to have a lot of incidents going on in the
It's
story.
fun.
That
They're fun to write. They're just crazy characters that they don't have a filter and they do anything.
mm, yeah. Um, so what is the music element in that? Since Murder Strikes a Chord, I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
might have missed it.
Nope, that's it. Murder Strikes a Chord. It's set on the corridor of I-81 in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and that used to be the old route to Nashville. And a lot of the stars, Patsy Cline lived in Winchester, and she would take the buses back and forth, and they would stop in Stanton and places like that. So her grandfather and his father owned a honky tonk, and it burnt down. But it was famous. It had all the classics from the 60s and 70s. The folks stopped by and they'd all sign the bar and everybody took their pictures. And it was just a place for the Pearly Girls to hang out when their parents didn't know about it. They'd sneak into the honky tonk.
Hmm.
And her other relatives further back in time ran a bootlegging operation because, again, that was popular in the mountains of Virginia as well. And you try to outrun the revenuers, and they have a cave on the property, so that's where they hid uh, their product.
Hmm. Yeah. So when did you actually start writing?
Oh God, probably sixth or seventh grade. I mean, I love Nancy Drew, and that went. I mean, that was just a gateway to the Hardy Boys and Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes, Poe. And I thought, oh, I could do this. So the very first thing I wrote was Sherlock Bones and the mystery of the missing. I don't remember what it was, bones or something, treasure. And I illustrated it too. So yeah, I was going to be an author.
Hmm.
And I didn't really get started until, I mean, I dabbled and played with it in college and did a lot of nonfiction and technical writing. And I said, I want to do this. And I found Sisters in Crime. And that's an amazing organization for women and men that want to write, that are writers, are interested in reading, readers, bookstore owners, things like that. And it's very supportive and it helped me get started.
So what was the first book that you wrote?
It was in the Delaney series and it was Secret Lives and Private Eyes.
Hmm. And so why did you start out in an area like what I gritty private eye? Why in that direction then?
I wasn't sure. I mean, I loved cozy mysteries, and back then I didn't really notice that. I read a lot of suspense, I read a lot of thriller, and then as I dove into it, then I realized, oh, there's different subgenres, and there's you know different categories, and there are things that these they're tropes that happen in these types of books, but not in these types of books. And that one seemed most realistic. She was a private investigator. Her brother's a police officer. Her father was a police officer. So she had that a little bit of. She was law enforcement adjacent. So she had some experience.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to set it here in Richmond in Central Virginia. And there's some parts where there could be crime, and there's traffic problems sometimes, and sometimes a lot of the crime was exaggerated because I made up the strip club and I made up all of his problems. But
Okay, and when I'm trying to think here, because you went from Delaney
oh, sorry.
Fitzgerald to Jules Keene
Mhm.
and glamping, and that seems like an interesting jump. It's Was there something in particular about glamping that you decided to hang it on? Was that something you visited that you thought that might be a point of that might be a good place to put a mystery?
My aunt owned a campground years ago in Crabtree Falls, which is in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Virginia. And so that was just a fun place to go camping. My husband rebuilds cars, British cars, Mustangs, boats, campers. And so we did a lot of renovations and projects and a lot of watching of television. And there was one show set out in California where the couple redid Airstream trailers and they glamped them up and made them really glamorous for camping. And I said, oh, this would be fabulous. So what if she takes her old campground that's not making any money and turns it into an upscale, glamorous camping? And then I fell in love with the little tiny houses experience. I don't think I could ever live in one because I don't know if I could part with all my books. I don't things like that. But so we're going to glamp it up, and so and then I get to name them and theme them, so they're all fun.
Hmm. And you have four books in that series as well. Are you going to have more?
Have two more. There were six under contract, so one comes out next October, and then the next October.
Oh wow, you're thinking that far ahead, are you?
I read ahead, so they were all written by the time my agent sold them.
Hmm. Yeah. So with all these projects, all these worlds you have, how do you tell them apart? How do you keep them apart? I can barely keep my shopping list separate from
Yes.
my hardware list.
I have to do one at a time. I mean, if I'm editing one and writing another one, I usually have to stop the writing and, completely concentrate on the one I'm editing or completely concentrate on the one I'm writing. Because Jules ends up in Jade's book sometimes, and Jade ended up in Jules, and so
Hmm.
I have to be careful. Maybe I should mix them up and have them pop in and visit each other.
Oh, absolutely. You could have a
Yeah,
multiverse going on here with crossovers. I mean,
that'd be fun.
actually, that would be rather interesting. I don't know if any other writers are doing that sort of thing,
Yeah,
but yes, you could have Delaney come down to Mermaid Bay and
yeah,
bring
just
her
be a
drama with her. I like that
and
idea,
boy,
actually.
they all have more. They are way more exciting than I am. I would run from the dead body. They're right there, touching it, poking it, seeing what's going on.
Oh yeah, definitely. I find my heroes are much more competent in my books than I am, so that's all for the better. Um, Now I understand you also work. Oh, are you still working? Do you still have a
I
day
am.
job these days?
Mhm, mhm. I'm
Uh,
a quality assurance and governance manager in IT. I work
mhm.
for a housing finance agency. There's 50 in the country, so we're a quasi-state agency. We're not we're not state employees.
Hmm. Has that influenced your writing in any way?
I think so. The IT part is fun. They're always coming up with, oh, well, did you know somebody tried this? Or, this is a really big thing that we need to patch for now. And it's like, hmm. And that's where I got the idea for vintage trailers and blackmailers. I was at an IT conference and they were talking about Dick Cheney's pacemaker and how it had Bluetooth in it and how the government decided they needed to turn the Bluetooth off because they didn't want anybody hacking the vice president's pacemaker. I'm like, wait, tell me more. What you can hack medical devices? Let's hear about this. And when in the story, the person actually doesn't do that. He threatens to do it, and it's enough to scare people into blackmailing them into, okay, I'll pay you the money. Please don't turn off my pacemaker.
Hmm. Yeah, it turns out that with the Internet of Things, it's possible to hack almost anything or to find a way of hacking. It's a knowledge thing, but the knowledge has to be spread around. But every once in a while, I see about um, white hat hackers, what they're called,
Mm-hmm.
who figure out a way of doing something like that. Um,
And things like one of the guys was reporting at another conference I went to about when like Amazon services goes down, they keep a track of what else is affected, and it's very bizarre what's connected to it because it'll be somebody's ATM in England and then it'll be somebody's oven and another, you're right, the Internet of Things, you just can't escape it anymore. It's
mhm,
everywhere.
yeah. Now, you were also, because you were the daughter of a police officer, does that influence the way you've written police officers? Because I saw from Tisket to Tasket that her boyfriend is chief of police there.
A sheriff, yeah, it's a small
Sheriff.
town.
That's
Yeah.
right, sheriff of the town.
Mhm.
Okay, and they get along very well, and they talk about the case. There's not really there's no conflict between them. Is that the same in all your books?
Some of them have a little more conflict. There's a couple where the sheriff is older and he keeps reminding her to stay out of his business and to stop it. But then in the next breath, he'll ask, hey, have you heard anything? So it's like you can't have it both ways. And she tries to get him to share. And in Murder Strikes the Chord, there's two gentlemen that are interested in her. One is a police deputy, and the other is someone who's a contract worker on the property. So there's a little bit of a love triangle going on at first, and then by the second book, she does choose one of them.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've got quite a lot on your plate here. Was I right? You basically published these books almost within all these books in the last 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really productive. I'm really very impressed to be able to do that. It's you found a way of getting out of your own way and being able to do this. Is there any other books coming up in the pipeline that you want to talk about?
My agent is shopping one around now, so I'm hoping that'll get picked up, and that'll be another fun one to do.
Yeah.
My first book, Secret Lives and Private Eyes, took 5 years to write, and then it took another 2 years to get published. And the sweet lady at church turned around and she said, "Oh, hon, I read it in one night. When's the next one coming out?" And I'm like, "Read it again, because it's going to take me a little while." And I have got to get better at that. And that was right about the time the pandemic hit and everybody worked at home. So I didn't have my hour commute in the morning and I didn't have my hour commute in the afternoon. I said, all right, I'm going to commit. I don't know how long I'm working at home. Every day I'm going to write in the morning, go to work. I'll write at lunch. And then if I'm done with my word count, I'll finish. And if I keep to my schedule like that, I can usually finish a manuscript in about 2 months.
Mm-hmm. And you pre-plan your plots.
Yeah,
I understand.
my spreadsheets, I have it all laid out. I have to know who did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't do I write myself in a corner when I pants, when I, write it off the seat of my pants.
Mm-hmm. Well, Heather, I thank you very, very much for coming on and talking with us. And I hope you're going to be at Malice Domestic, aren't you?
I will. I'll be there.
Okay. So if any of you all are going out there this year, be sure to look her up and look into her books. And Heather, I want to thank you very much for appearing with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And this is Bill Peschel for Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents. And I hope that your favorite book is the one you're reading right now. Bye-bye. The Mechanicsburg Mystery Presents podcast is sponsored by the Mechanicsburg Mystery Bookshop in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. The store is open with limited hours, plus we accept appointments and offer a drive-by service. The store will also ship books to your home, including those from the Peschel Press Mystery line, including our annotated editions of novels by Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers. To learn more, visit the store at www.mysterybooksonline.com. And thank you for listening.